What songs would you want played at your own funeral? Welcome to Farewell with Four, Melodies for a Final Goodbye on Curious Goldfish, the music podcast about more than music. Each guest picks 4 songs they want played at their funeral. No rules, no judgment, just music that defines them. It's a rare, intimate glimpse into the artists you love, revealing their deepest connections to music, legacy, and meaning. Laughs, surprises, maybe even a few tears. Farewell with Four is about celebrating life through the songs that matter most. Tune in and get to know your favorite artists like never before. Farewell with Four, Melodies for a Final Goodbye. On this episode, Dallas-based songwriter, musician, and record producer Salim Nourallah shares his farewell with Four.
Hey, Salim, good to see you again.
Good to see you. How's it
I
going?
appreciate your time. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. 2025, I can't believe it's already almost springtime. It's
I
flying.
know. So the years are flying by.
Years are flying by. So we spoke in the fall when you and Bob and your other buddies were putting out the album for the Disappearing Act.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I have this idea to have a kind of a different conversation around. I mean, yes, it's about death, but more importantly, I think it's about connection and meaning and how music has impacted people that I talk to. And so I reached out to you to say, hey, you want to talk about songs you'd want to have at your funeral? And you were nice enough to say, yeah. I'm in. So thanks for doing that. Yeah, thanks for doing that. Before we get into the songs, how do you think about death much? And, do you come at it from like a spiritual angle or more from just a practical angle?
Do I think about it? Oh, yeah. It takes me all the way back to being a kid and one night having the horrible realization that this was all temporary and that many of my loved ones, especially my parents, I would probably see them perish one day. And I still have a vivid memory of, I'm not sure how old I was, but being in the bathroom, looking into the mirror in the bathroom, crying, bent over the sink, feeling like I was going to throw up. And it was in our house in El Paso on Constellation. And that was a big moment. But I've spent my whole life trying to slow down time, trying to do anything that I could do to trick time, to slow it down. Part of being a musician is this whole trying to cheat time, because as a child I realized that I thought, well, wow, there's something about being a musician. Paul McCartney, it will still sound like young Paul McCartney even when he's old, or it's like music has a way of immortalizing people. And then I also thought that most of the adults, and I'm going to call the straight world, not in a sexual way, but in a like the straight world being the, follow the straight and narrow path,
Right.
all seem to be old, even though they weren't that old. And so that was another thing, I thought, as a musician, you can kind of maybe cheat time in that respect too, and not age prematurely.
Yeah.
So just about everything I've done has to do with that question.
How old were you when you were sort of bent over, upset like that?
I'm not sure. It could have been anywhere between like 8 and 12. I'd like to say it was probably, most likely, I had passed 10, because I don't think that those kind of things really hit us until we start creeping into being teenagers. So yeah, maybe actually I was probably 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's interesting, I don't know if you grew up in the church or whatever. I grew up in the Midwest, so attended lots of church through the years, and
Sure.
I regret some of it. Some of it I don't, and some of it I actually still sort of cherish. But I think thinking about this conversation, what I've thought about is when you grow up in an environment where people actually are longing for heaven, and they want to kind of, shed the skin and all the pain and heartbreak, and they actually look forward to heaven. It kind of gives you a perspective of like, okay, well, if I die, I'll be in heaven. And it's a little bit, looking back, I think I had a flippant attitude towards death,
Yeah.
for a long time, just because it was like, oh, it's no big deal. I'm going to go to heaven because I believe in Jesus or whatever. But like now at my age, in my early 50s, it's just I have a different perspective. It's like I can't look at it that flippant.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, isn't comfort the thing that organized religions really offer to sell what they're, sell the deal? It's
yeah.
that comfort. And I came from a split family religiously because my father was Muslim
Hmm.
and my mom was Christian. I've already kind of called my dad out in a song called Born with a Broken Heart. But when I was nine-ish, I asked him on the way back from he was taking us to these Quran studies in Fort Bliss. There were a lot of Jordanian soldiers at the time stationed in Fort Bliss. There's a big Arab American Muslim community in El Paso. But anyway, the short of it was we were learning about the Quran. He was kind of trying to teach us about Islam. And I asked him if our mom was going to heaven because they believe in a heaven. And he said no, because she was Christian. And that was a very defining moment in my life because I thought, well, how can like the kindest, most absolutely a light uh, of a person be not going to heaven, and you're going to heaven just because you're on this team.
Right.
And then the Christians are the same way.
Right.
They believe Muslims wouldn't be going to heaven. So as I looked into it more, I just decided that it was all just a way to get people on a team, and I just didn't buy into any of it, and kind of accepted this notion that, hey, what if we just try to be good and kind to each other and
Right.
accept that we don't know what the F is going on, and it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to not be hold on to this blankie of comfort, and just accept that that's part of, I think of this, what I call the cosmic joke,
Hmm.
is that no one is ever going to know without a doubt. And there are people that would say they do, but they actually don't. And and that's beautiful. It's incredible. It's
Yeah.
like it's it's just lean into it.
No, I love that.
But
Yeah.
that's my spiel on that. But
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah. All right. So I think before we started recording, you mentioned that you've kind of thought about this topic of like what songs to be played at your funeral. I guess
Oh yeah.
why is that? I'm just curious.
Uh because of this ongoing feeling that I am a person that even at my lowest, I just love being here. I love it all the
Hmm.
things. I don't love suffering. Nobody does, but even when there's been suffering, there, I still would never choose death.
Hmm.
And I've thought about it because it's, I definitely would like to, ha- when I go, whenever it is, I'm hoping that I'll have like all my ducks in a row and not kind of be like both my parents just didn't prepare anything at all,
Got it.
and it's really hard on your family and loved ones. And so part of my trip is just, even down to the music, I guess I would want to kind of be able to just give them something and say, okay, here you go, this is simple, like
Yeah. Here's
the
the board.
will's here, the it's all, this is what I want, this is what I don't want.
Right.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
the
That's
music will be
awesome.
part of it.
All right. So let's dig in then. So
All right.
when we talked in the fall, and it's pretty well documented your love of the Beatles
Yeah.
and your fandom there.
Yeah.
Your first song is one off the Let It Be album, and it's called Across the Universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me about that. And it's one of the four that you play at your funeral. So there's obviously a meaning there.
Well, it could ultimately be the only one. If this was the only one that was played, it'd be the perfect one. I don't know that there's ever been a cooler, better, deeper song written than Across the Universe. A, a song, as far as songs that involve the bigger picture, Lennon's lyrics are so poetic. Uh, it's just perfect. And then the sort of mantra of "nothing's going to change my life" uh, is it has always been so touching to me throughout the course of my life, because of course we realize that it's always changing.
Hmm.
It's always changing right before our very eyes, and we can't even see it. I mean, there's nothing like a child to to prove that, to show you that. And there is something like, there's a melancholy in that I've always been attracted to, that even on the most beautiful of days and the most wonderful moment, that's fleeting, and then it'll just be another memory stacked on
Hmm.
another memory on another, and
Right.
Lennon's song is absolutely incredible, that in the context of whatever you want to call it, pop music or popular music, that he did that. I will say, this is when it gets, my kids should take note that I am not a big fan of the Let It Be version
Oh,
with
okay.
the orchestral.
Mhm.
There's an incredible version on the anthology that
Hmm.
think is a little more pure. There's several different versions of the song, and I guess I should probably track down the one that I think is the definitive one.
Right.
But I definitely know that the Phil Spector version is the glossed up version. That's the one that most people know. It's not the best version of the song, in my
Got it.
opinion.
Okay.
And,
Well,
and
what's
yeah, what?
interesting is you're talking about your upbringing with Islam and Christianity. I'm not a Beatles expert by any stretch, but in sort of looking at the song and doing some research, was this not one of the first ones where I think Lennon was leaning into sort of the Indian Hindu kind of culture and things like that? Which
Yeah,
I think is interesting that I don't think there's a coincidence that he was leaning into that and he was able to produce something like Across the Universe, right?
yeah. Well, I think he wrote it in the batch of songs that came out of the India trip, and it was slated to potentially be on the White Album,
Hmm.
which I don't really know why it didn't end up on the White Album. I think it would have been incredible on the White Album. And the White Album's my favorite Beatles record, so it's not a surprise that to me that song came from
Right.
that group of tunes, and why it slipped through the cracks. I'm not sure. I don't know enough of my Beatles history, I guess, but it didn't ever fit in on Let It Be. I think they were just trying to cram it in to Let It Be, because it was obviously a good song, and
Yeah.
it hadn't really found its place.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with like I was surprised when it was on the Let It Be album. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
pop, you know.
Yeah, but if I were to say, I don't really align with any uh, organized religion. I do believe that there's a creator. I do believe that there's something going on. I'm definitely
Mhm.
not an atheist or someone that, but I would be most closely aligned probably to Buddhism of all of the major
Mhm.
religions. So
Okay.
I
Yeah,
guess that's probably why Across the Universe also resonates with me.
that makes sense. All right. So number one is the Beatles. Not no surprise.
Yeah, yeah.
Second one I want to talk about is I'm not familiar with this band at all. It's like a post-punk band called the
Yeah.
Comsat Angels. Is that right?
Comsat Angels, yeah.
And the song is After the Rain. All right. So where in the world did you hear that song? And yeah, tell me about your relationship with the Comsat Angels.
Well, the Comsat Angels always take me back to my childhood in El Paso, mainly the teen years. My brother Faris, who I used to play music with, we worked in Cielo Vista Mall on the east side of town, and our dad had a jewelry shop called London Square. He used to call it London Square, and we used to. I learned how to play guitar pretty much. I had my guitar. I'd sit in the back. We hardly ever had any customers. I'd play Elvis Costello and the Clash and play guitar, and then there was a record shop in the mall that had a really small but cool import section, and on break sometimes I'd go to the store and just browse and buy records if there was an interesting album cover, and I saw this album called Enz, ENZ, and I flipped it over, and there's a black and white photo of the Comsat Angels. They looked pretty cool, down to earth. There were no U2. And I read there were liner notes on the back, and I liked what the singer was saying about the songs. And I just bought it, like didn't
Oh
know
my God.
anything about him. This is probably like 1982, so I would have been 15, 16. And I loved that record. And After the Rain was on that record. It was a compilation of songs taken from their first three albums that had come out between 19, I think 79 and 82 on Polydor. And they're just a wonderful band. And After the Rain is would be, as far as my funeral songs, the maybe the last one to play, the uplifting one, that the it's gonna be okay.
Right.
Instead of playing Coldplay or something like that along those lines, I think the Comsat Angels in that song do such a good job delivering a positive message of hope without being ham-fisted or
Hmm.
ending up in an arena.
Hmm.
It's just a really interesting, like the herky jerkiness of the backing track and this guitar figure that's sort of hypnotic. And I've just always thought it was such a beautiful and evocative song. And anyone who hasn't heard the song, who ends up chasing it down, unfortunately you can't hear it on Apple Music or Spotify or anything. None of their music is on that. But if you buy the record or listen on YouTube, listen to this song Someday After a Storm.
Hmm.
It's perfect. It's just perfect. It's a very evocative song. So
What I like about it is the simplicity of it. The sun will shine again
yeah,
after the rain. It's like, okay, well, that there's not much there, but then there's a lot there, you
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
especially in the context of a funeral, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
to
for
your point,
sure.
yeah, it is. I can see why that could be the last one because it's like, okay, the sun's going to come out.
Yeah, and it always does. Even the greatest losses in our lives, some that are so unbearable that we don't think that we could ever be happy again. And it's hard. It never stops being hard when you
Mm,
miss a loved one like that. But
mm,
the way that this life is set up is, if you soldier on, if you continue, then you will, the sun will come back. There will, you will be happy again. You will, and you'll carry them with you, but it's not just going to be like that forever.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
that's one of the beautiful things I think about this place that we're in, and our ability to feel emotions, you know.
Yeah, well said. That's beautiful. All right, so third song. Ironically, when we were messaging last week about the songs and about getting this scheduled, I happened to be in Melbourne, Australia, for my
Oh my
day job.
gosh, are you kidding me?
So
Oh,
when Crowded House came across, I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
that's beautiful. That makes me happy. That I got chills. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's like
I know.
cosmically serendipitous.
I know. Yeah. So Crowded
Weird.
House, People Are Like Suns. So this is another great song.
Well, had you heard that song?
I had not heard. I mean, I know their popular stuff, but
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with this one.
So that song is what a incredible concept, I think. Firstly, like Neil Finn ends up delivering in a classic melody and all of the things that he does as a son of the Beatles. But the concept that people are like suns, and we burn brightly and then
Yeah,
fade. God, like
it's good.
it's so good. And that song is on an album that came out after their drummer Paul Hester committed suicide.
Hmm.
And Neil has several songs on that album that deal with loss and death. And I think it's one of his best records, but at that point in his career, things were never going to get as much attention as early on when he wrote Don't Dream It's Over and then In
Mhm.
the Glory Days. So, but I think it's a great example of an artist still continuing to grow and do great work that I think even some of his fans honestly miss that record and miss that song.
Hmm.
And that song, if it had come out in a different time for him, or I think it would have been massive because it's such a moving piece of work, incredible recording. I just there's also, by the way, the music nerd is going to speak up. There's a piano vocal version of that song that
Oh wow.
is gorgeous.
Oh wow.
So if you can find that, I highly recommend it. It's stellar, and that might be the version that I would pick.
Okay.
So I would have to track down the right version of Across the Universe, and then the alternate version of People Are Like Suns.
That, that would be horrible if your family played the wrong version. You
Well,
know.
it'd be okay. They played the wrong version. There's still this. You can't destroy the songs. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and both versions, like the Crowded House version is really
Hmm.
great. So I'd be
Well,
I'd be
again,
fine.
another example of powerful lyrics, or lyrics can be powerful when
Yeah.
they're simple.
Oh,
So it's like people are sons. They're burning up inside. It's like, oh my gosh, that is incredible.
yeah.
You kind of talked about it, but the imagery that sort of evokes is, I was like, oh my gosh, that's really good.
Well, and there's this kind of slow motion way that the song just like it's yeah, it's hard to put into words, but it's like I have this feeling of being in space in a
Mm,
way, and um, but just thinking of all the great lives and people that shone so brightly.
mm,
Like look at John Lennon, who only made it 40 years, and how brightly
mm.
he all the energy he radiated, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And yeah, that it's like if you listen to that song, close your eyes and just start thinking of people that were all the things they did, from Kurt Vonnegut to, you know, to Lennon to whoever, and it makes the song even more moving to me. It's
Yeah.
really easy to go there and think of our parents, think of any loved ones we've lost. It's
Right.
impossible not to get emotional.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful song.
That's a great way to put it. So last, but obviously not least, and speaking
Yeah.
of incredible people that emit incredible energy, that it's been a really important part of your life, your brother,
Yeah.
Faris, right?
There's
His song called "The Road" would be your fourth and final farewell with four here that we're talking about. So obviously that's just touching, just the fact that he's your brother, and obviously like there's no such thing as brotherly love. Where did you first hear that? Were you part of that in any way? How did that become so meaningful to you?
Well, I'll never forget when I first heard it, because it just stopped me in my tracks. Like, I like forget that he's my brother.
Hmm.
I just thought, if Ray Davies had written this song, or Paul McCartney, or just take your pick, it would have been lauded as a masterwork, I'm pretty sure. So it just absolutely blew me away that my brother had written a song that was just of that level, not only melodically, but the way the words move, and it's interesting that he's not following just the traditional rhyming structures, and it's just an incredible song, and the fact that it's just piano and voice with the faint background vocal, and it is devastatingly beautiful
Hmm.
in its starkness. So I first heard it, I guess maybe 2000, 2001, when he was working on what would become his first solo album, which was I Love Faris, is what it's called. And I was uh, uh, I was still hanging on to band life. I was in a band called the Happiness Factor, and I hadn't yet waded into my solo career, but we had already, Western Vinyl had already put out the Nourallah Brothers album, and we had already realized that there probably wouldn't be another one.
Hmm.
But I helped him sequence that album. I guess I was involved in the respect of, he was sharing songs with me, I was reacting to them,
Right.
and I was helping with the record, because he never really cared that much about sequencing records, and it's like, that's your deal, you do that. So, but I've for years just thought, someday I'm gonna sing this song, I'm gonna record my own version, or I just
Oh
want to
wow.
sing it. And recently I did record a version, and then I have been doing these shows of our music, because he stopped performing many many years ago, like
Hmm.
almost 2 decades ago, or no, he stopped performing 25 years ago, and quit music about 16 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
So I just, now I feel like The Road is just one of those songs, like, if I don't carry the torch, then no one will. But I couldn't think of, as far as four songs being played,
Right.
when I'm gone, that's just another incredible song that deals with the passing of time, and
Yeah.
all of it.
No, that's amazing. I mean, that's what brothers should do, right? Is carry the torch for each other. So
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
What So outside of music, what's your best memory of you and Ferris as brothers?
Best memory. Oh, there are lots of really great memories outside of music. When we growing up, we were inseparable. We were only 18 months apart,
Mm.
and we had the desert in El Paso. It was still a lot of desert, and just kind of, I guess some of my best memories are riding our bikes and s- hanging out like with our friend Jeff Georges, and like being in the desert and adventuring and that kind of thing. It just got more complicated as it often does as you get older, and being in uh, business together. I'm joking, but the
Right.
business of music, and how hard it is to find an audience, find your way,
Mm.
all of the things that happen. Um, that all set in. But yeah, as far as memories of our childhood, it's just nothing but good ones.
No, that's
Hopefully that
beautiful.
answers the question.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think before we started recording too. You said that you were listening to a pressing of an album from a couple
Yeah.
decades ago. That you are you reissuing it? Is that what you're doing?
Well, yeah. So the Nourallah Brothers record we made was never a record, even though it came out on Western vinyl. It was
Oh wow.
only a CD. And so to commemorate 25 years, we're putting out a double vinyl edition of uh, it's a kind of morphed into an expanded edition, but with side C is the best tracks from our aborted second album, and then side D is, I don't even know how to explain it. Like in November, I started sifting through three large boxes full of hundreds of CDs that my brother had left behind 8 years ago. That had, back in the day, we were recording on 8-track recorders and 16-track recorders, and everything went to CD.
Hmm.
And these CDs are by and large unlabeled. And I found about 4 or 5 albums worth of unreleased music.
Oh my goodness.
So his music, Nourallah Brothers music, and then now with, they call it AI technology, but it's not AI in the sense that we're the way that we're. Basically, the technology is where you can separate the vocal tracks
Hmm.
from the instrumental track, which is amazing because you can basically then get in and you have way more leeway with the music. So I've found a bunch of unfinished recordings that he started that we've stem separated the vocals from the backing track, and then I've been singing with my brother again for the first time in over 20 years, and
Oh my goodness.
adding instruments. And then so side D is kind of a mashup of some of these new discoveries. So it's new, old Nourallah Brothers, because ultimately all of the music originated
Yeah.
back when everything, we were doing was happening. But it's been brought into the now. So
That sounds
yeah.
so cool. When will that be ready, do you think?
Well, I think I'm expecting to. I have a pre-order on Bandcamp right now where people can pre-order the record on, it's the Nourallah Brothers Bandcamp site, and the test pressings listen to tonight. And if all 4 sides are thumbs up, then I think we'll have copies will be shipping in May.
All
So
right. All right.
yeah.
That's what a cool process to go through, right? Just
Yeah, it really is. And there's just something about a record and thinking, those guys all those years ago,
yeah.
vinyl was gone then actually. So we would have never imagined having a record. And then we also would have never imagined being able to stem separate songs and revisit songs. I actually found our very first Nourallah Brothers recording, and it was, the vocal recording was so bad it sounded like it was recorded in a toilet basically. But I was able to take the vocal out and re-sing it and use the original backing track, which was weird and washy, but once you had a better sounding vocal, it took on this really cool uh it and so we salvaged that song through this technology.
That's that's
So
that's so cool. That in the
yeah.
light of all the press about AI and artificial intelligence, and I know that's not what it is, but
Yeah.
it's hopeful that technology actually can resurrect and paint a new coat of color on music. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we're definitely experiencing it now and reaping the benefits because it's the project wouldn't be what it is uh, without that. It just wouldn't have happened.
that's
It
so
would be a
cool.
different thing, but
Yeah,
it's we have a single coming out in a month or so where we're both singing together, like right there together, and it's a vocal he cut 20 years ago,
that's awesome.
but we're together now.
Yeah,
So yeah,
well, good. Well,
yeah,
Salim, I really appreciate your time. So, just to recap, we've got the Beatles, Comsat
yeah,
Angels, Crowded House, and of course your brother Faris. So,
yeah.
really appreciate you sharing those insights and being vulnerable enough to talk about it and share. So, yeah, I enjoy that a lot. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you for reaching out again. It's great to see you, and I've enjoyed these two conversations with you very, very much. So thank
Okay.
you.
No, that means a lot, Salim. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your year. And look forward to the pressing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually pre-order one right now.
Oh man, that's super sweet of you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
I'm excited. But yeah, have a great rest of your year, and yeah,
You too.
cheers to you and your brother.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
All right, thanks, Salim.
Great seeing you, man.